such as cyclones and rising sea levels in Fiji actually has been at the forefront in facing these disasters. Given the deep interconnection between climate change and socioeconomic inequalities, how can governments implement comprehensive policies that build on community-led or traditional resilience strategies you already referred to in your first question, so feel free to just build on that. And what are the policies that the government of Fiji implemented in this regard that may be relevant for other MICs as well?
Thank you. Climate and equality. Climate change definitely disproportionately affects indigenous and remote communities. Coastal erosion, as we all know, food insecurity, and the displacement of villages that are in the coastal areas are worsening. Remember that they are tied to the vanua that they are leaving behind. So it's a very sensitive issue at the moment back home. We have to ensure, I can just give a quick example. When they were relocating, they built houses, and guess what? They forgot to build a kitchen. So where do they expect the women to cook their food? And some of these women that were displaced were actually cooking from their sitting room. So we are working on a national adaptation policy to ensure that when we relocate, we cover all aspects of including the kitchen, the playground for the children, the whole works. Villages such as, Vunindongaloa, I probably won't mention, but they've already begun the relocation process, efforts due to rising water and coastal erosion. And like mentioned, that, it's just not the physical displacement, but they represent a loss of ancestral connection, community cohesion, traditional knowledge. So they need to go through some counseling session to actually mentally, spiritually prepare them for the displacement. The policy that the government of Fiji has done, two landmark policy. One is the Fiji's National Adaptation Plan. It's a long-term framework that provides a roadmap to building climate resilience across sectors, communities, and ecosystems. And this policy or framework actually was aligned to the global guidance of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and is deeply rooted as well in our National Development Plan. Also, the second one is the Climate Relocation of Communities Trust Fund. Ensure that adaptation is embedded in the national planning and dignified relocation of communities, like I mentioned earlier on. So these frameworks prioritize community engagement, proactive relocation, and traditional knowledge of integration. Now, using the local solutions, the rural communities are restoring ecosystems, creating disaster risk plan, and documenting the traditional knowledge of how to do that in the past. The women lead water and food security projects. Youth are engaged in digital advocacy and climate entrepreneurship. In the holistic approach, the government, we advocate for inclusive climate policies and that combine the climate responsive social safety net, green jobs targeting youth and marginalized groups, and also affordable disaster insurance, like you mentioned. We have the anticipatory action that covers about 15,000 recipients, and also the parametric insurance that covers the 2,000 beneficiaries. But I like the anticipatory action because you give money. When there's a disaster coming, you start calling out on the radio, on any platform, prepare, pack, move to hire. But some of them, they don't even have enough to prepare. So the anticipatory action is good because you give them money prior to the disaster. Parametric comes afterwards. So with the recent consultations on disaster risk financing policy proposed the adaptive social protection component. I have a few more, but I know you're signaling that my time is up, but I'm more than happy to ask any further questions that may come up. Thank you.
Thank you for your understanding, ma'am. There's so much rich sharing, but we will come back to you, absolutely. Thank you so much for your understanding. Ms. Odnak, herders make up a very unique proportion of the Mongolian population because they are nomadic and they face significant barriers in accessing social protection. So what measures has the Mongolian government taken, because this is one of the most left behind groups, to address the issues faced by herders, and how successful have these initiatives been? If you can be succinct and give us the answer. Yeah, it's fine.
Herders in Mongolia face multiple challenges due to climate change, poor infrastructure, pasture degradation, and seasonal income. Those factors combined with poor infrastructure, remote location, and limited awareness of social insurance and informal employment make it difficult to them access social protection system. Herders' income is unstable. Cashmere sales in spring, meat sales in winter are their main source of income. Also, direct cash payment of insurance premiums are the main barrier, and many herders doubt the benefits of contribution. Also, their lifestyle affect to access education of their children, and also forcing families live apart. To address these problems, government of Mongolia has taken several key measures. For example, subsidized social insurance. Now herders can now voluntarily enroll social insurance, and they contribute only 30.5% of pension premium, and government covers 50% of pension premium for up to 5 years. Also, government implemented the reduced retirement age. Men can retire at 55, and women can retire at the age of 50 with 20 years of contribution. Also, mothers of 4+ children get an additional 5 years reduction. Next one is a digital access to services. Mongolia has built a strong databases, digital system and national databases. This is important in reaching people in remote areas. Yeah. Also, for example, government of Mongolia has implemented social welfare service platform, and this platform allows herders to access 64 out of 72 social welfare service online. In 2024, 99% of users access the benefits digitally. Pension and benefits are now transferred to bank payment card, and information on various services like 1,700 services is accessible through the eMongolia platform. Right. Also, yeah, we have a mobile services. Mobile service improve healthcare access in remote areas.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go on.
Okay. Also, government of Mongolia done some awareness campaigns and training. This awareness campaign and training helps herders understand the value of insurance and their rights. Legal and employment support. According to revised labor law, contract template for assistant herd has introduced, and about $2.8 is allocated annually to support small-scale herding families. Yeah, as a result of this reform, herders' participation has been increased. For example, in 2022, only 12.4% of herders were enrolled in pension insurance. This is increased until 21% in 2024. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Amazing story about how many 99% of the beneficiaries accessing the benefits online, and that too for a nomadic herding population. So it's a very interesting story. Thank you so much. We'll now move on to Romora. Mr. Romora, it's a very simple question to you. What aspects of the Kartu Prakrya program can serve as a model for other middle-income countries looking to enhance workforce resilience and youth employment? So I'm looking for the good practices or maybe elements that you think are worthy of replication.
Thank you for the question. I think middle-income countries will all face many challenges in implementing their skill development program. There are at least 3 challenges. The first one is giving inclusive access, and even though they have access, making sure that the beneficiaries complete the training. It's also a challenge. The second one is making sure that the quality of the training is standardized and works for every people in many different regions. And the last one is relevance, making sure that the curriculum align with the market demand. Now, in terms of access, I already mentioned about digital transformation, but we know that not everybody have digital literacy. So what we do in Kartu Prakrya is we have this empathy to the beneficiaries. We have 7 days a week call center, web link, live chat that people can always ask about question on the training, how to assess or register to the training, and so on and so forth. And to ensure completion of the training, we also we nudge them by sending regular reminder. And we know that people respond to incentives based on basic economics. So we give them cash incentive after they complete the training. With regard to providing quality training, what we do is all 500 training providers who enter our ecosystem, we let them be assessed by independent assessor. These are higher education, NGOs, and also business associations. And after the training is sold in our ecosystem, then we ask another independent monitor to monitor the implementation of the training. Now, with regard to relevance, this is hard because based on LinkedIn, 41% of skills in Indonesia required for a job will change between 2015 to 2025. So just keeping up with the current skills is already hard. Now you have to anticipate the next skills. So what we do is we collaborate with the employer itself. We collaborate with Microsoft, United Tractors, who used to give training to their employee. We ask them, can you give training to our to our beneficiaries as well? And the last one, what we do is we always look at labor market trends. So we have API with job platforms. We also scrap job vacancy, and we create machine learning that shows recommended job vacancy for each of our beneficiary based on the training they took. So that's are the 3 things I would suggest to focus on: access, quality, and relevant training.
Wonderful way to structure your response, and I'm sure there was much learning that came from that, and your willingness to incorporate the private sector as well as independently be evaluated. Sometimes that takes courage and also openness. Aura, the last question in this round is to you. You work a lot on informal workers. Informal workers, as we know, are one of the most vulnerable groups, and that's one of the main hurdles for the coverage of social protection. So based on what lessons, I mean, you have conducted extensive research on this. What strategies have you seen which have been successful in covering informal workers especially in middle-income countries? And what lessons can be drawn from these regional and global efforts to inform us here as to how informal workers can be covered? Of course, we are not going to have a magic wand to turn them all formal. Is there any other way of covering them?
Yes, yes, this is a very difficult question as well. So maybe let's give a context first. So there are two-thirds of workers in Asia Pacific are working informally. There's around 1.3 billion in Asia Pacific. There's a lot of numbers. There's a lot of workers. And who are they? Maybe we're all wondering, who are the informal workers? So informal workers are the people that you met outside when you buy cheap foods. Informal workers are those who are collect your garbage, those who are tuk-tuk drivers and jeepney drivers who brings you to work. So these are the farmers, the fisher folks who feed us. So basically, these are the workers that are around us and essentially the backbone of our economy. But majority of them are not protected by labor and social protection laws. And most of these workers are women. So what are the issues? Why they are not, where are they in terms of social protection? They are missing. Why? One, because they are not poor enough to be considered to access social assistance, the poverty-targeted social assistance. But they are also not rich enough to afford the contributory system. So that's why we call them the missing middle. I know Mr. Michael already mentions a lot on social assistance, so I would be focusing more on social insurance. And I know many of us are not Social Security administration here, so I'll make it very, very simple. So there are 4 A's on the barriers while many informal workers cannot access social assistance. One is affordability, second is accessibility, third is attractiveness, and 4 is awareness. Affordability is the biggest factor because our social security system is designed for formal workers, meaning with employers in mind. But as I mentioned earlier, most of the workers are self-employed and are own account workers, meaning they do not have employers. So they have to carry what we call the double contribution burden. They have to pay both the employer share and the employee share. The second issue is the attractiveness. So if our system is designed, for an instance, only for pension, but you are sick today, so you won't likely to avail of the pension if you need something for today. So we need to make our system, our schemes more attractive to the specific situations of informal workers. Third is adequacy and also awareness. So where do people also learn about social insurance? And accessibility, like when your cost of compliance is higher than the benefits that you're gonna get, am I going to enroll to that program? No, right? Because I'm paying more to get access to the service, but I'm getting less. So these are some of the challenges, but the good news is there are many countries who are making a lot of progress in addressing this. Let me just cite some samples in Latin America. Uruguay, for instance, and Brazil have started the monotax regimes where you pay both the contribution share to Social Security at the same time for business registration and income tax. And then here in the region, we have good examples as well. For instance, Mongolia. Mongolia already shared a lot of examples, but something that's really cool with Mongolia is they partnered as well with cooperatives where you can actually pay your Social Security with livestock or raw materials. So how cool is that? So we have Mongolia. We also have in the region the site of samples of India, where they use as well 1%, this is for construction workers, they use 1% of the tax on construction cost for the payment of the Social Security of the construction workers. So another example we have from Thailand and Malaysia. They recently introduced, Thailand already have this for decades, but Malaysia recently introduced subsidized matching subsidies. So they match whatever the worker's contribution or self-employed's contribution to the system. And we also have, there are also good incentives like also India, we were talking about climate change. India recently introduced heat wave insurance, wherein when you hit a certain heat, like 40 degrees, workers, informal workers can have a basic money that they can get when they decide they don't want to sell on that time. And there are many good examples, but the bottom line here is that we need to make our system flexible so that we can adapt to the peculiarities of informal workers. We need to make it really accessible, that they don't need a lawyer just to sign up, and a lot of things that we can make it really accessible for them. So just in final message, I think we were talking about inclusive growth. We were talking about not leaving behind, but if we don't focus as well with the majority of workers in the middle countries, then we cannot make really an effective inclusive growth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aura. How much did you squeeze into that limited time? And there's this great information. Thank you. I could see a lot of nods around the audience and smiles. Well, we've come to the end of this part of the panel discussion, but I think the most interesting part lies ahead. I'd like to open the floor. We have a little time, maybe 8 to 10 minutes for questions from the floor. Yes, and I have the distinguished delegate from Costa Rica to start us off. Can you have the microphone, please, if you will? And also, okay, we have Armenia, then we'll come to Costa Rica. Okay, a microphone there too.
Thank you. I thank the distinguished speakers for very wonderful remarks outlining their country's experience in social protection and inclusion. I would like to ask you, since in the panel we don't have, apart from our distinguished moderator, we don't have representatives of the UN system. I would like to ask you, do you have programmatic cooperation with the UN country teams in your countries in promoting social support and inclusion? Especially, I would like to highlight especially the role of UNRCs, bearing in mind that literally all the UN agencies have specific programs aimed at ensuring social protection, TVET, protection of children by UNICEF, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you. We will be able to answer that, apart from, I think, we have RCs also in the room, so we will cover it. Distinguished delegate, Costa Rica. Microphone there, please. In the front, there.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much to the panelists for their very important insights. We middle-income countries, we face a paradox, of course. We are drivers of global economy, but yet we are highly vulnerable to global shocks. But of course, we all remember the COVID pandemic, which exposed all inequalities, our structural gaps and social protection systems, and reverse decades of development gains. So, and of course, many middle-income countries face the lack of fiscal space and the lack of institutional resilience to really tackle these global shocks. And we also face the dilemma of needing to stimulate the economy while also protecting vulnerable groups, often with limited fiscal space. So this is the paradox of the sustainable development. Of course, we cannot favor only one dimension, one aspect of the sustainable development, for example, the economic, in detriment of the social and environmental aspects. So this is why this panel is extremely important in this conference, because it's the social aspect of sustainable development. Of course, all the three aspects are intertwined, and for example, nature-based solutions, that is something that we totally advocate, that tries to make more visible how protecting the environment and protecting the rainforest, for example, in Costa Rica, can bring social benefits for communities and for the whole country. But going back to the global shocks, of course, we learn a lot from the COVID pandemic, especially in Costa Rica, that in order to fully implement social protections, we identify a lot of gaps, and it was very hard for us to prevent the full realization of comprehensive, permanent, and resilient social protection because of this. So building on those experience from COVID-19 and recognizing that we are highly vulnerable to these global shocks, I would like to ask the panelists, maybe the distinguished secretary from Fiji and from Indonesia also, what lessons can you share to us, fellow middle-income countries, to better tackle these global shocks, especially like a pandemic, and how to better respond, how to overcome all the bureaucracy or the red tape that sometimes experience middle-income countries in order to have an immediate response to for the benefit of the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Costa Rica. And yes, Mexico, please. Yes. You've taken note of the questions, right? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much to everyone for their insightful presentations. I would like to ask Mr. Samson a question regarding his presentation, which was very interesting, and we thank you for that. So you had a timeline of social programs, which I would love to have a copy of that, because it's very, very good. Regarding the difference between conditional and non-conditional social protection programs, I would like to know, you did mention that these programs do not create any dependency, and there is no trade-off between equity and growth, and we would very much agree with you, but in terms of conditional versus non-conditional social protection programs, would you see a difference in that regard, creating dependency and contributing to economic growth of the country at large? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll take one more question before we start answering questions. The lady in the front there, please. Jamaica? Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much to the panelists. Very informative session. I have 3 questions. Am I only allowed one?
No, ma'am.
Just
as long as it is quickly straight.
Okay, great. So I'll be very sharp with the questions. The first question that I have is, what is the role of evaluation in ensuring resilient and responsive social protection systems? And the second question is, how do social protection systems treat with temporary vulnerable people? What are the recommendations around that? For example, in the cases of an emergency, any of us in here could become temporarily vulnerable. And then the third question is, as it relates to how do we ensure that funders, bilaterals or multilaterals, actually consider the social protection context in each country, particularly as it relates to gender considerations. In our context in Jamaica, we see where our men are marginalized. They are the main perpetrators of GBV. We're having significant issues as it relates to men. So while it is that there are some subsectors that women are disproportionately treated, we're seeing holistically that our men are the main marginalized cohort. So we really I want to have an understanding around any recommendations coming from the panelists on these questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have collected 4 questions. We'll perhaps answer them in the order that they were asked. The distinguished delegate from Armenia asked about the role of the RC system in supporting. As you know, I just wanted to say that there's been a priority given to social protection. It is recognized as the enabler for all the SDGs. And over the last 2-3 years, I think accelerated action has been taken in all countries where on a priority basis, and RC systems are being strengthened, RC offices are being strengthened, and all support to countries are being routed through the RC offices so that they are coordinated in every way. It's not just about support on social protection system for their for the sake of it, but also linking it to other mega trends like environment and others. And I'd like to give an example of Fiji, for example. We have the resident coordinator of Fiji here and maybe I'll ask him to also support you on this. There is a plan for strengthening social protection in the Pacific, and there are ongoing projects linking it to climate change, as also covering informal populations. Maybe I'll ask Dirk if he's ready to maybe give a very short response and then maybe have an offline briefing. But that is clearly a very big priority identified by the leadership. Very much. Dirk, maybe quickly.
Thank you very much, Srini, for making me part of the panel. Wonderful.
Yes.
I wanted to, support some of the interventions the PS Iseta made earlier. Actually, both of the examples which she made, both the anticipatory action as well as the parametric insurance products have been actively supported by the UN system. The parametric insurance has been piloted by UNCDF and supported obviously by the RC office, and is not just applying to Fiji, but we are seeing now also how we can roll it out in other Pacific member states, because we're looking specifically for regional partnerships, because we want to make those parametric insurance products in partnership with the private sector and making sure that it's a commercially viable product, so a product that doesn't need to remain to be subsidized or supported either by the public service or by the UN. The other example is the anticipatory action, which was actually led by the RC office in collaboration with OCHA and other partners of the Pacific Humanitarian Team. I think PS Iseta has explained it already. It works similar to the parametric insurance. It works with trigger points, so that basically cash transfers are being initiated automatically when we reach a certain trigger point. In the case of Fiji, if a tropical cyclone, at least category 3, 4, or 5, is within the vicinity of 250 kilometers of Fiji, it is automatically triggered and automatically paid out.
Thank you very much. And just the flavor, I mean, it's ongoing, and thank you very much. But it's a very important point, distinguished delegate from Armenia, and reiterated in the declaration, in the Makati Declaration, where they have reiterated the need for more support in all this. So wonderful. So I'll go back to the panel to answer all the other 3 questions that we have had. Perhaps we'll start with Ms. Iseta, maybe the question from Jamaica as well as the question from Costa Rica, please.
Thank you. I'll probably answer the one from Costa Rica regarding lessons learned from COVID-19 and the Winston Category 5 cyclone that came to Fiji. So what happened is, because COVID-19, because we have a border restrictions internally, there was no movement. So what we did is to reduce the travel allowance that I mentioned. We do give out the travel allowance scheme. We reduced the travel allowance to increase the funds that we give out to the other, because we know that there were no movement for quite some time. So that was one initiative we did. For the family assistance scheme and the child protection is actually introduced to cover the shock, just to cushion the shocks that they go through. And they're supposed to be just in there for 3 years, and then they are weaned out because the situation will change. So those are some of the continuous improvement in terms of ensuring that we are weaning them out after 3 years. At the same time, we are going through a social protection reform through the government of Australia, and in that we are actually digitizing our system. We have a population of about 839,000, about 130,000 social welfare recipients. So you know it's quite big. And what we do is to actually ensure that we digitize the manual records so that we can avoid any duplication, any missed payments that are coming up through the system. Also, I chair the cash working group, it's been mentioned, whereby we pay out for the anticipatory action. And we also have a safety protection cluster group that we kickstart during a cyclone that's coming up. So those are some of the measures that we have in place to assist in terms of cyclone or any shocks that come through our way. Thank you.
Okay. Ramora, I'll come back to Ong Not in 2 minutes, but we'll go to perhaps Ramora for the question on evaluation that was asked and any other aspects that you think are valid for you.
Right. I will answer to the question from Robert, my friend from Costa Rica first, and then from Jamaica. So when COVID happened, we have a lockdown in Indonesia. And our program starts just 1 day after the lockdown. Fortunately, we have two co-founders, Hengki Sihombing and Denny Puspa Purbasari, who are technologists as well as policy advisors. And they know that when it happened, they have to be adaptive. So during that time, we have dual mission. Not only dedicated skill development program, we initially is a skill development program only. We now have to help government to send cash transfer. And therefore, the training voucher amount is less during COVID, but the cash incentive is increased. So we have to be adaptive. And the second lesson learned is, during COVID, we were supposed to give the training offline. But you cannot let people queue offline, right, during COVID because of lockdown. So we try to pivot very quickly, making it into online platform. But what happened? In just few minutes, thousands of people come to our platform. And it was scary, challenging, but what I learned is because we have in-house technology team, instead of outsourcing our platform technology to other companies, we can fix and tweak this platform to have bigger data, bandwidth, etc. So we have to quickly, like Erseta said, continuously improve our program whenever there are shocks like COVID. The second thing is about evaluation. Our executive director, Budeni, did hundreds of FGDs before designing this program. And what is interesting that after the program lasts on 1 year, he asked team from World Bank, ADB to come and open the data to be evaluated. And that's what we do. So we open our data of beneficiaries and ask experts to do impact evaluation of our program. And therefore we can get insight whether our program is efficient or not. And I think this is important to create pilot project as well. Before you create a large scale program, you have to have pilot so that you know exactly that you are doing a program with a good design before it is done in a large scale. Thank you.
Aura, you can answer all the questions.
Very quickly for the question on Costa Rica, one thing we learned from the pandemic is based on all the interventions that's done on social protection, one thing that stands out, that countries who have a more robust, stable social protection system were able to recover faster or better than those countries are not. So meaning to say they have more already established social protection systems, so they were able to cope up with the pandemic quickly. So this is the right time that we need to invest more on social protection before any other shocks would also occur, and also in the context of climate change. Second, on gender, just very quickly, how can we make it also in the context of gender-responsive social protection? There are 3 things we can do. One, we need to disaggregate data by gender and also by socioeconomic factors so that we would better see who are affected. Second is we need to expand the definition of vulnerability beyond women and children. Maybe those men that are systematically marginalized, we need to also include that. And third would be to support men to engage more constructively. We need to promote more male allyship and also promote more positive masculinity so that we can also have more males as allies. Thank you so much.
Positive masculinity, yes. Yes. Michael, over to you to answer all of the questions, whatever you feel like from your experience.
I'll just take two, an easy one and a hard one. I'll start with the conditional versus unconditional. This has been a timeless debate in social protection, and it really depends. It depends, the purpose for cash transfer programs is to tackle poverty and vulnerability. And both conditional and unconditional programs tackle current poverty by giving people income, and they tackle future poverty by building human capital. And does it matter if you put a condition on it? It depends on whether the cause of the human capital problem is behavior. Because conditions are incentives. They change behavior. And if a household is not sending their children to school because the school's not there, no condition is going to help that household. Building a school will help that household and build future capital. If I go into a school in a remote rural area and all I see are boys and no girls, I may think the problem here is behavioral, and maybe conditions will help. But we cannot assume that the poor are responsible for their poverty, and that all we have to do is give them a carrot or a stick, and we'll lead them out of poverty. And this is where evaluation, by the way, comes in. We need good evidence before we design these programs to make sure they're most appropriate. We have seen conditional and unconditional programs both tackle effectively current and future poverty. This is the easy question. The hard question is about global crisis and how do we respond to that. And it's important that you nuance this. We're not talking about national crises or local disasters. We're talking about global crises. And the nature of a global crisis very often is that no one nation can solve it. No one nation could solve COVID. It was an opportunity for unprecedented global cooperation. And no one nation can tackle the crisis of climate change. Never before in human history has a crisis so aligned the self-interest of every society. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem that every country agrees. But the evidence I presented earlier suggests that middle-income countries get it better than anyone else in the world. So what's the best thing you can do? We heard it yesterday. Be united, work together, because there will be extraordinary pressure, centrifugal forces tearing middle-income countries apart. And if middle-income countries are divided, every middle-income country will lose. We're in the middle of the grand negotiation of our lifetime. And the most important thing I can say in answer to your question is what we heard yesterday. Be united. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other pressing questions? If there are not, I have the great pleasure of then delivering, to say that first I would like to really ask you to extend a very warm round of applause for our wonderful panelists. I hope that we are convinced, if we needed convincing, and from the statements from all, it's clear that we're all on the same page, that middle-income countries need to increase investment in social protection systems, make them more agile, make them more comprehensive, if we are going to make it up the ladder and escape the middle-income trap. It's very important that the word leaving no one behind is not just a slogan, it's a commitment, it's a moral, social, and economic imperative, and we all know that. So thank you very much for being a wonderful audience, and I believe that we are just on time, so thank you very much for all your support. It gives me great pleasure to close. May I ask for the panelists to stay for just a photograph so that we can capture this great collection of people together. Can you stand? Michael? Come.
Thank you very much to our moderator and panelists for the insightful discussion. May we now request all the speakers and moderator for the next thematic panel discussion to please join us on stage. Once again, we are requesting all the speakers and moderator for the next thematic panel discussion to kindly join us on stage.
Thematic panel discussion. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I represent the Corporate Decarbonization Exchange, the Southeast Asia Corporate Decarbonization Exchange. I'll jazz up the panel introduction a little bit by being able to set the context first and then calling all my esteemed panel speakers to join me upstage. And at the same time, I'd like to engage with you, Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, to join us and make this as engaging as possible. It is the last stretch for the day, and also the final day of a two-day conference. So please join us in tiding us through in this conversation. By way of preamble, may I please share with you a few contexts for the discussion for this afternoon. Throughout history, technological advancements have been the primary catalyst for progress. Economic growth, a key dimension of this progress, is a central ambition for many middle-income countries striving to move up the income ladder. While over the long run and in the aggregate, technology has overwhelmingly spurred development, its near to medium-term effects and its uneven distributional impacts across socio-economic groups and countries require careful management. The disruptions caused by technological shifts can widen inequalities, leaving certain population groups, industries, and nations struggling to keep pace. How can MICs use AI and digital tools to leapfrog stages of development and address non-monetary bottlenecks? Please join me in welcoming our esteemed speakers as we attempt to answer this question, unpack contextual complexities, and navigate how MICs can harness technology as a driver for inclusive and sustainable development. Honorable Secretary Renato Solidum Jr., Secretary, Department of Science and Technology, Philippines. Mr. Walter Jose Mira Ramirez, Minister, Counselor, and Second Committee Expert, El Salvador. Mr. Philip Shelikans, UNDP Chief Economist for Asia Pacific. Ms. Sarayu Natarajan, Founder, APTI Institute, India. And last but not least, Mr. Monchito Ibrahim, Vice President, Analytics and AI Association, Philippines. It will now be our privilege to hear from the Honorable Secretary Solidum for his opening remarks, after which we'll proceed with the panel discussion. Secretary Solidum, the floor is yours, sir.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, good afternoon. I was tasked to respond to the question, how should we assess the potential of emerging technologies for both economic growth and broader development? At the outset, let me just say that technologies should be human-centric. Technologies should be viewed as a tool, not to replace people, but to make our work effective and efficient. Middle-income countries stand at crossroads, driven by the aspiration to achieve a higher income status, stronger global standing, and access to resources, while navigating a dynamic and complex landscape marked by rapid technological shifts, climate urgency, evolving demographics, and changing patterns of globalization. In this environment, science, technology, and innovation, or STI, are not just tools for progress, but are the very engines that will propel the future forward. International and multi-stakeholder cooperation based on respect for international law are essential in this regard, without which we can neither manage the risks nor seize the opportunities in science, technology, and innovation. We must engage stakeholders, especially the international financial institutions, the private sector, the technical and academic communities, and civil society in our goal to accelerate progress. Nevertheless, we have to ensure that the progress that we gear towards is one that is inclusive, equitable, and human rights-based. The Pact for the Future, which was an outcome document of the Summit of the Future, recognizes that science, technology, and innovation could deliver breakthroughs to a better and more sustainable future for all. Action 27 commits to seize the opportunities associated with new and emerging technologies and address the potential risks posed by their misuse. Hence, it is imperative for us to be guided by science-based mechanisms to determine how we fare in this technological wave through frontier technologies. There are various methodologies and tools that we can employ in assessing the potential of emerging technologies for sustainable development in national and international setting. At the recent 28th session of the United Nations Commission on Science and Technology for Development, held earlier this month, where the Philippines served as the vice chair for the Asia-Pacific Group, the importance of technology assessment and technology foresight exercises were recognized. These, along with science, technology, innovation, policy reviews, are beneficial for assessing one's capacity and areas of growth. The Philippines, including the Department of Science and Technology, also supported UNESCO in its 2021 recommendation on the ethics of AI and the recent implementation of the AI Readiness Assessment Methodology, or RAM, in the country. As a result of the series of consultations, reviews, and research, a report has been drafted to which the department has provided its comments on. It revealed challenges in fully harnessing the benefits of AI, such as the fragmented AI governance and policy gaps, and limited funding for AI research and infrastructure. These are some of the realities that the MICs commonly face, especially with the limited resources and capacities we currently have. Nevertheless, we see them as opportunities for growth. Lastly, in addition to science-based multi-sectoral approaches, we must build an enabling environment for our economies to be ready for emerging technologies. This may be through institutional, infrastructure, and human resource capacity building in line with our national and international development agenda. In our practice at the Department of Science and Technology, the use of science, technology, and innovation must be in tune with the capacity of the stakeholder that you try to help. We cannot just prescribe one solution to fit all. So we have to be very, very focused on what technologies, what skills need to be upgraded for our stakeholders. Distinguished speakers and colleagues, it is the very potential of science, technology, and innovation that will move beyond incremental improvements and will transform our economies as MICs. But you have to use science, technology, and innovation appropriately to the real-world problems that we face. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary Solidum, for setting the context nicely for our conversation this afternoon. And I'll give our esteemed panel speakers a chance for a 1 to 2 minute introduction of your relevant work in this space, and perhaps to weigh in on what Secretary Solidum already just shared at the moment. I'll start with the gentleman to my left, Philip.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm not going to read anything, but try to just have a conversation, so you'll stay nicely awake. I'm Chief Economist for Asia Pacific with UNDP. We're doing a lot of work at UNDP on AI, looking at AI as a tool towards furthering not just economic growth, but human development. And I'd like to make one quick observation, and then we can go into detail later, which is an opportunity and risk. And that imbalance is sort of divided between the economist world and those who are closer to the technology, and also the financiers. The financiers and the technologists look all the time at the opportunity. The economists tend to excessively focus on the disruptions. So there is one disconnect I'd like to point out. There have been described disaster scenarios in terms of the labor market impact. Let's take a historical view. There is a substitution effect, but also a job-creating augmentation and innovation effect. If you look at US Census data 50 years ago and now, about 60 or 70% of the jobs that exist today did not exist 50 years ago. Yeah? So let's keep that in mind. The second imbalance, I think, is when we talk about both the disruptions and the opportunities, and we look at the impact on countries, there's a huge disconnect between how much attention is spent on discussing inequalities within countries. Yeah? There is very little discussion so far of the inequalities between countries. And that, I think, matters for this conference, because we're not only interested how different socio-economic groups are doing within countries, we're also wondering whether lower middle-income countries can continue to climb up the income ladder just like upper middle-income countries. The growth aspirations in this region and also beyond are very ambitious. Many countries, I think in this region alone, I can count off the top of my head 16 who have articulated ambitious growth strategies to climb up to upper middle-income country or high-income country. These growth aspirations will not be realized without thinking through the prospects of technology for continued convergence. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sarayu Natarajan. I'm the founder of APTI Institute. APTI is a research organization that works at the intersection of technology and society, and we're deeply interested in questions of equity, justice, access, and consequently questions of governance of technology. Our areas of work are quite diverse. We tackle any kind of social question in the context of digital technology, be it in the context of labor, public technology systems, AI, social media and communications. So all of these are our areas of work. Particularly in the context of AI, we've been deeply involved in debates around AI from several dimensions. We look at questions of bias and harm and risk, both in terms of how to build better AI systems, and once they're built and deployed, how do you think about social solutions around some of these challenges. We also do work on work. So what is the future of workers, particularly in the context of middle-income countries, which have very many of which have large populations, the question of the effects of AI on work, as well as how to use AI in the context of work are relevant. And both of these are areas of interest for us. And then, of course, questions around data, making data available and usable for the public sphere are all areas of interest. I'll respond very quickly to a provocation in the earlier comments, which is that our interest is in this binary quality or this almost paradoxical quality of AI, which is that it can be significantly beneficial in democratizing access, fostering innovation, and spurring economic growth. But at the same time, there are legitimate, deep concerns around the effects on work, the effects on public systems more broadly, and this is the paradox and the tension that APTI loves to work in. Back to the next gentleman.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mon Ibrahim. I'm actually the Vice President of the Analytics and AI Association of the Philippines. It's actually composed of about 1,800 plus data and AI professionals, mostly based in the Philippines. We have day jobs, but we've actually been very, very actively engaging ourselves in a lot of both government and private sector initiatives to actually set up guardrails in the use and development of AI in the Philippines. In the Philippines, we can describe the AI era in terms of BC. What do we mean by BC? AI before ChatGPT and AI after ChatGPT. So September 2021 is actually, the time we see as the day when AI was actually democratized. Before ChatGPT, basically most Filipinos look at AI as science fiction, okay, and may actually be the cause of the end of the world. But after probably 3 months after ChatGPT, they realized that, yeah, indeed, it's a very powerful tool that we can actually transform how we live, how we study, and how we do business. How ready is the Philippines? I'm actually going to comment on that in the next few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mon. Walter?
Thank you, and good afternoon. Let me just start by saying that it's an honor for me to be part of this panel and to be with these distinguished panelists. Just to frame a little bit the discussion, and I think it is important the different representation that we have in the panel for this type of discussion, and I think the Secretary already framed it in a way about the importance of multi-stakeholder and the approach needed when we talk about digital transformation. Also, there was already elements raised when it comes to the disruption that digital transformation can bring, not only in terms of economic growth, it can be seen in a way how you can harness digital technologies or the rapid technological change for a higher economic growth, but also how can this disrupt and can also impact other aspects of development. So that's when we can see that rapid technological change is definitely having a multidimensional impact when it comes to labor markets, as has been raised before, but in that regard, how middle-income countries, in the context in which they are already facing specific challenges, and they don't want to be left behind of these rapid technological change and innovation, we need also to address the foundations needed so they can truly harness the potentials and the benefits of technology and AI, for example. So we're willing to engage with colleagues and looking forward to a fruitful discussion.
Thank you so much, Walter. And just before I come back to Secretary Solidum on a deep dive question, I'd like to get a sense and temperature of the room and, stir some engagement with our audience members here. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, if you would indulge, could you please raise your hand if within today you used any AI, ChatGPT, Perplexity, or any AI at all in assisting with your work? I'd like to see the room, please. Okay, thank you so much for coming forward. I actually see a very good number, a very healthy number, right? So thank you. That brings us to the focus of our conversation then, that this can be a powerful tool to assist us in our work. But coming back to you, Secretary Solidum, sir, I would like to lean in on what you said, that there should be an appropriate use of science and technology for sustainable development. Could you please share with us how this is being done in the Philippines?
Okay, if you talk about AI, we have been implementing and funding AI-related projects since 2017, but we have been scaling up our effort to also increase the compute power and democratize the use of AI, not only to research institutions, but for example, micro-enterprises. In the Philippines, we have the mom-and-pop store, for example. We call it Sari-Sari store. We have startups looking at linking the business-to-business evaluation of the most saleable products that can be sold in a geographic area. We link the Sari-Sari or mom-and-pop store with the producer and distributor. And by looking at that, they have more sales. We can also look at it from the perspective of which product is not saleable in a specific area. So The idea is to really promote AI for all. Of course, for our big industry and businesses, we still need a lot of upskilling to be done, and that is the priority with our private sector counterparts. But it's fun to really reflect what we have been doing before BC and after BC. We have been doing a lot of machine learning to label all the remote sensing data and many videos. And essentially, these are very easy to do to make work streams much effective and faster. We have been looking at health, agriculture, aquaculture, almost everything, even school administration. But what we need to look at though is really talk to the different sectors of society, especially different industry impact sectors, on what they really need in terms of AI, so that we can promote. And we have been developing together with the private sector and the Department of Trade and Industry the transformation innovation that is needed by the strategic investment priority programs, so that we can really help them use digital transformation and even AI and other technologies. So recently we have announced the big R&D programs that we are doing in the Philippines. Aside from the traditional ones, this would be democratizing AI so that we can help MSMEs and the industry. Use spatial analytics to build the sovereign data that we have. Third is quantum computing and technologies. Fourth is Industry 4.0, smart agriculture, smart technologies for urban and house improvements, living lifestyles, circular economy, like AI can be used there as well, and of course biologics in pharma. All of those can be influenced by digital and AI technologies.
Wonderful to know. Thank you so much, Secretary Saldum. I come back to you, Philip. I'd like to dig in deeper into what you said about the disconnect. And this is actually one of perhaps the articulated fear that, technology and disruptions like this might further the divide between already rich countries, developed countries, and developing economies. Within your work at UNDP, how are you making sure that AI is harnessed for good and that AI is not going to amplify this divide and instead is going to bridge the gap between these inequalities?
I think, first of all, we need to be aware of what the impact of AI could be on global inequality. As you know, global inequality is a function of within-country inequality and between-country inequality. And with the rise of China and India, we've seen over the last few decades a massive decline in between-country inequality. I would like to submit a view, and it's a provocative view, not underpinned by any data, but by a hunch, that this era of decreasing global inequality may be over, or at least that AI, relative to the counterfactual, may contribute to upward pressure on global inequality. Of course, there's other factors affecting global inequality. In the end, it might still go down further, but at least I think there's a real risk that AI will go in the other direction. And look, AI is not the only trend. We see right now what I would call disglobalization. I don't like to refer to deglobalization. I don't think there is deglobalization. There is disglobalization. There's a slowing in the pace of globalization, hopefully a temporary hiccup, but that could in itself lead to greater global inequality. We also see the uneven impacts of climate change. And on top of that, we now have AI. Now, why do I think that AI could lead to greater or at least upward pressure on between-country inequality? There are three reasons. First of all, and I've asked the technicians to show a chart. I hope it's ready. Is it ready? Yeah? Yeah, thank you very much. So this is a chart showing the AI preparedness index from the IMF. Yeah? And sorry to sit in front of some of the elements of the chart, but here on the left-hand side you have lower income countries. This is the column of the high income countries, upper middle income countries, lower middle income countries, and low income countries. Yeah? And it measures to what extent are countries actually prepared to deploy AI. And you see this little horizontal bar, that's a population weighted average of each income group. So you see the traditional result. High income countries are on average better prepared than upper middle better than lower middle, and lower middle better than low-income. And I would like to include the low-income countries in this discussion. I do think middle-income countries not only are looking up the income ladder to the high-income countries as an aspiration, but also have a responsibility towards the low-income countries to help them. And this conference might as well have been called the Developing Country Conference, because middle-income countries represent 90% of all developing countries population-wise. So now the other thing that we see here is that there's enormous variability across the average by income group. Look at Rwanda on the right-hand side, a lower middle-income country, which is better prepared for AI than many middle-income countries, including some high-income countries. Yeah? And we also see that several middle-income countries are doing better than some high-income countries, and conversely. So there's a huge disparity, a huge variability, and unsurprisingly so. We see that internet access is just 27% in low-income countries, 52% in LMICs, 80% in UMICs versus 93% in HICS. Fixed broadband costs are 1% of monthly GNI per capita, gross national income per capita in HICS, but 3% in UMICs, 8% in LMICs, and 31% in LICs. And the UN, I think, declared 3% as sort of the affordability threshold. So high-income countries are, in my view, much better prepared to take advantage of the benefits of AI. And that's one reason why global inequality could go up. And now I'm done with this chart, if you like to put the other one back up. But the second reason is that poorer countries may be less prepared to deal with the disruptions of AI. Now you might say, well, it's actually the high-income countries where production is more skill-incentive, repetitive tasks are more prominent, that may be more exposed. That may be true. But the high-income countries are also better equipped in terms of social protection mechanisms, availability of active labor market instruments, and so on, fiscal space, to deal with the disruptions. And that could be potentially a second reason why global inequality may increase. And then the third reason, and that's a topic very close to our heart at UNDP, which is related to the question of what is the development model of the future. Look, in the past we thought that export-led industrialization was the development model of the past, the dominant one, the Asian miracle. The recent manifestation has been China, exporting your way out of poverty by manufacturing and then selling in overseas markets that are more affluent and larger than domestic ones. That model is affected by AI, advanced AI and robotics. Think of Bangladesh, the garment sector. 60% of garment workers in Bangladesh are found to be at risk. That model is now being replaced by another model, and Philippines is a good example of services-led development, exportable services, but there AI is affecting the business process outsourcing. So there's some real questions as to how yes, we can adopt a positive perspective on AI in the long term and in the aggregate, but there will be disruptions in the near term and the medium term and underneath the aggregate. And the disruption will be felt in the developing world because we will have difficulties. We are scratching our head as to how to infuse renewed development dynamism into the collective of middle-income countries at this time. So then you ask a question, and I don't know if I still have a minute or so. Yeah. What could we do? Well, I could give you the bread and butter answer, right? Which is to look at the strategies to preemptively diminish inequality, and then when it occurs with complementary and compensatory policies, deal with it. And that bread and butter answer would include traditional things like investing heavily in digital infrastructure, making sure there's reliable electricity, emphasizing education and skills training. There's a role for international collaboration. There's a role for local innovation. And there's a role to prepare for the potential of job disruption. But I always say this to everyone, even though I'm an economist, I believe that 90% of the development challenge ahead of us has nothing to do with economics. It's all about governance. So I think that the reason why we may see greater divergence in the future It will not be for lack of knowledge about what are the strategies that are needed to contain this. It will be because of a lack of wanting the change that we need and a lack of capacity and capability to implement the change that we need. That is, I think, where the bottleneck is.
Thank you so much, Philip. Thank you so much, Philip. That is thought-provoking indeed. And among the panelists, would like to give the chance to Mon to react to that, please.
Thank you, Ping. In the Philippines, in the Philippine context, you know, every conversation on AI would definitely touch on the services sector of the country. Okay. Specifically, the business process outsourcing of this sector. For the information of some of our foreign guests here, today it is actually a $38 billion sector, okay, and it's expected to grow to $50 billion by the end of 2028. Today it employs 1.8 million Filipinos, and it's expected to actually be employing a total of 2.5 million Filipinos. These are direct employment. So every conversation now touches on, you know, the impact of AI on this sector. So the organization, we actually have a local organization, the IT and Business Process Management Association of the Philippines. They actually did a survey late last year of all their members, about, you know, almost 400 companies, okay? About 95% of them are actually multinational companies, with just about 5% Filipino companies there, okay? And, you know, the result of the survey was a big surprise, where 11% of those companies are saying that they have fully AI-enabled their operations, okay? 56% of them are saying we are currently implementing AI, okay? And the rest, of course, are still considering or not actually having any plans at all. Now, meaning to say that 2/3 of the almost 400 companies are already into AI. And of these 2/3, surprisingly, only 8% of them are saying, because of the implementation of AI, we decreased our number of employees by, only 8% of them are saying we actually reduced the number of employees. 13% of them said we actually increased the number of employees because of new job roles brought about by AI. 50% of them actually are saying no change at all, but we definitely need our people to be either upskilled, because there has been a significant shift in job roles, okay? So that is now the operative word there. We need upskilling of these people. So these are some of the key takeaways in that survey, basically saying that, the BPO sector in the Philippines is beginning to actually ride the AI tide, okay, bandwagon, and there are emerging job roles that are actually coming up, and we need government to support our upskilling efforts.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Mon. I can still clearly remember, without giving away my age, the sound of a dial-up connection. Do you still remember that? Who remembers the sound of a dial-up connection among our audience members? And, it indicates to us that there was an era before everything else, when the internet was new. It was 60 pesos per hour to connect to the public internet Wi-Fi, and now we have Wi-Fi everywhere. And of course, there was a diskette before, but now everything is on the cloud, and now we're in the era of AI. And it seems to me, having seen this, that the first mover advantage always crosses the chasm first. And the problem with that is that, like developing economies don't have as much wiggle room to take the risk and take the plunge. And so I guess my question for the rest of the panel speakers, and maybe I can start with you, Sarayu, is that how do you see funding sources to help economies, cushion the blow and, kind of like make the adoption of these technologies work to their advantage? And both Walter and also Secretary Solidum can weigh in on that. Where can we get support so that we can adapt, given that we don't have a lot of wiggle room to make mistakes because we are a developing economy?
Thank you for that question. I think it goes to the heart of some of the themes that came up in the earlier parts of this conference discussion as well, which is how are we going to finance this, given there's a lack of physical space in many countries. I'll just take a very short moment to discuss some theoretical work and then perhaps jump into more practical solutions. But we've been pondering this question of sustainability and financing of digital transformations as well as AI for quite a while. And there are a few lessons that our research has shown us. The first is that financing support, we often imagine it as the flow of capital, but there are often non-financial supports and architectures that are very relevant in the digital journey. And this could be in the form of research, it could be in the form of human capacity support. There are various forms that this takes. So paying attention to that, to the two modalities of growth and development is critical. I think the second is that if you think about digital transformation itself, it appears to have sort of three distinct phases, and this is relevant for any kind of digital system, which is the development of it, some kind of implementation process, and then some kind of maintenance process, because these systems need to continue to work. And this is extremely relevant in the context of public systems, but worthwhile considering anyway. Our finding or our view is that there are two kinds of risks or challenges or opportunities, depending on who you ask, around these kinds of technical systems. There's the implementation risk or opportunity, which is that is it a technology for the whole population? Who does it affect? So there is an implementation component to technology. And then there is an innovation component. Is this a technology that's radically new, radically surprising? And in this quadrant, or 2 by 2, depending again on the vocabulary you choose, lie some of the answers to who should finance and how they should finance. Because it's significant to pay attention to areas, for example, where there are low risks, but a high need for innovation, and then the private sector, philanthropies, people or organizations or individuals that have a higher capacity for risk can play a role in financing. When there is a large scale of implementation, which is a technology system that affects the whole population, perhaps public budgets become relevant there. Again, there is no formulaic answer, but paying attention to what kind of technology system, what kind of implementation it is very relevant in arriving at answers, not just on who should finance, but what instrument. Should it be a financial instrument like a public budget or equity or debt, or should it be non-financial support? For example, the history of Linux is not possible to write without IBM, which sent its workforces in large numbers. And so for us to think about these sort of different modalities or opportunities, I think particularly because the private sector comes up often in these conversations around technology, again, there are multiple strands to it, but particularly in thinking of the private sector as a financing partner, to my mind, a critical concern is governance, because the role of the private sector, whether as a contractual service provider, when systems have consequences for citizens, is very, very important. There are multiple modalities to do it. Sometimes the instruments themselves contain the answer. Sometimes the answer is slightly more broad-based. But a few ideas around the ways in which particularly the private sector can be involved, besides public-private partnerships and co-partnerships. The role of the private sector, particularly in the non-financial space, around human capital training, and dare I say data sets. I know that this is sometimes controversial, but all of these roles are worthwhile considering for the private sector. But I'll just quickly respond to just 1 minute to, I know it says wrap up there, but just 1 minute to respond to Philip's and provocation around the effects on work. In fact, one of the papers we're writing is exactly one that explores the relationship between AI and work, particularly online gig work, as well as online forms of work. So largely within the service industry, business process outsourcing, freelancing, even coding, a lot of which is done in very many parts of the world outside. And so indeed, the research shows that where there is a high degree of complexity and high degree of computer interaction is when it's most likely to be affected by AI. But that's just one part of it, which is the consequences on jobs and unemployment and social protection. But the second order is the inter-country inequality, which is that very many of these jobs end up being or risk being in countries where populations are doing this kind of work, while technologies are built and the benefits of it are reaped in other parts of the world. So while paying attention to these inequalities, I think this injustice also is one to think about.
Thank you so much, Sarayu. And Walter, just to also share the perspective from the international community, what do you think can the international community do together to ensure that MICs catch up in this rapidly evolving space?
Thank you. Maybe just to frame a little bit the discussion, and I know that at one point we were focusing on AI because, of course, of the disruptive nature that it has. But if we go one step backwards, when you talk about digital transformation, even within middle-income countries, the differences in terms of context and capacities to harness digital technologies. As it has been shown, and it's a fact, there is, of course, a concentration among countries and sectors when it comes to AI, which, of course, can represent a challenge for developing countries, but middle-income countries to be consumers, not engaging and not involving in terms of value creation and not drivers of innovation. So that's the context that we currently have. That has been said already in terms of the fiscal constraints, debt challenges, and also I think it is important, and I think in line with what you were saying, which are the actions that can be implemented by international community. Firstly, we need to acknowledge that there are some fundamental aspects that needs to be addressed in terms of what is needed throughout the whole stages of digital development. When it comes to infrastructure, has been said before, skills and capacities, but also when it comes to enabling regulation, but also how financing can be a core aspect of any digital strategy. Having heard the experience from the Philippines, national ownership, and the view of having this broad aspect in terms of multi-stakeholder approaches, but the need to have this shared work with private sector and other actors, it is important in order for you to promote international cooperation in that regard to address some of the gaps that you need. In the framework of the UN and multilateral conversations, there has been recent developments. Just last year, we were able to agree the Global Digital Compact, which is one of the documents that it was agreed in the context of the Pact for the Future. This basically represents a roadmap for countries, but not only countries, but relevant actors to contribute to digital cooperation. At the end, each country has its own national strategy and national policies and priorities. So of course, any support should be framed in the way of what the country really needs and the context that the country needs. But at the end, the GDC represents, in a way, a blueprint or a roadmap in which many actors can contribute and can also put their own efforts towards the same goal. I think it is important to acknowledge when we talk about the importance of harnessing digital technologies for developing countries. From one side, it's also recognizing that there is a need to have an equal participation or representation when it comes, for example, on governance issues. That's something that it has been recently discussed. When it comes to north setting and when it comes to AI, it's even more relevant. Developing countries usually are not part of the discussion when it comes to establishing standards or norms when it comes to these new and emerging technologies. But at the same time, how the international community can provide relevant resources. Some ideas were already being said in terms of innovative mechanisms and blended finance, or how public and private partnerships can also support this endeavor. And I'm glad that, for example, we have with us UNDP, but there are other agencies and relevant entities that can contribute, and they are contributing, for example, for countries to address gaps in this regard. Just maybe to frame in a way what is in a view of a country that puts digital transformation at the center of the policies, as many middle-income countries, is acknowledging that this represents an opportunity not only to have a higher level of growth, but also of the impact that it has in different levels of development. So I think the higher level of ownership that you have at the government, that also improves the engagement that you can have with other actors and relevant stakeholders to support your efforts.
Thank you so much, Walter. I am having my eye on the time, and I can see that we are perfectly on time in terms of inviting our audience members to engage with our speakers. So I'd love to be able to hear if you have any burning questions from the floor for Secretary Solidum, for Walter, for Mon, for Sarayu, and for Philip. Any raised hands? Please come to the front, and if we have microphones available, thank you. Kindly state clearly to whom you will be addressing your question. Thank you so much. Uruguay. So technology is getting in the way of us for now, but there you go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you all the panelists. This has been very, I think, a ritual panel, particularly for us that we are, as it was mentioned also by some of the panelists, engaged on some of the discussions at the UN. I do have a particular question, and perhaps picking up on some of the references and ideas explained in terms of the labor markets by some of the panelists. And I would like to ask, in your vision, how we can better navigate this dual impact of AI on labor markets, balancing particularly the risks, as it was mentioned, particularly in job substitution, but other risks that we may face, with the opportunities and innovations and productivity gains. And I'm thinking perhaps particularly in the context also of the informal employment that is raising. And I think actually Mr. Ibrahim mentioned something about the necessity of upskilling that is going to be fundamental in terms of probably face some of the challenges on the labor market, but perhaps if we can have some other ideas on how we can face better that. And in relation to that also, if there are currently international cooperation and policy efforts for helping countries particularly to understand and manage this duality. And I'm thinking also because I think we need better to understand in that particular perspective that it's not just the risk, either is just the positive side. So we need to combine and I think better prepare our labor force and actually policymakers that we can benefit while addressing some of those challenges. So that would be my question. Thank you.
Mr. Ibrahim, would you like to?
I'll give it the first shot. Okay. In the Philippines, maybe this is something that is unique to the Philippines, but definitely we just copied it from one of our ASEAN neighbors, Singapore. Even before I was born, there was already the job skills mismatch situation in the Philippines, okay? Because most of the defining the courseware, defining the skills development was this content, okay, was significantly influenced by the academic institutions. 2 years ago, the Philippines embarked on something very, very new to us, okay, where we ask the industries to define the skills and the competencies that they need between today and probably even 5 years from now. That is how the Philippine Skills Framework started. And today, the Philippines has actually developed 7, and it's a working skills framework, 7 sectors, sectoral skills framework, okay? And last year, we launched the Philippine Skills Framework for Analytics and Artificial Intelligence. 100% defined by the industry, okay? When we launched it, it was actually adopted by the Higher Education, Commission on Higher Education. It was actually adopted by our Tech Walk, Development Authority, and it was also adopted by the Department of Education. As well as, this is very, very important, we're now actually, working on driving the adoption of the skills framework by all the universities, the higher education institutions. And we believe this is going to be one specific, very significant, probably solution to the age-old job skills mismatch as we prepare for frontier, the coming of frontier technologies in the Philippines. So our upskilling initiatives will actually be based now on the Philippine Skills Framework. By the way, as I said, we copied this from Singapore because they initially funded the development of the Philippine Skills Framework. We got a grant from the Singapore government. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Philip, did you want to?
So when we think about the labor market effects of AI, let's not forget that this market has 2 sides, right? A demand side and a supply side, and there's a tendency to focus a lot on the supply side, the skills policies and so on. I'd like to focus a bit more on the demand side, so the derived demand for labor. So looking at product markets and what firms are doing, the private sector development agenda, because a good part of the story of protecting jobs, generating new ones will have to do with the capabilities of the sectors in the economy to adapt, to mushroom. And you're right, the BPO sector in the Philippines, as per your survey, is adjusting. The other day I was in Bangladesh, same thing, BPO in Bangladesh is embracing AI. So the sector is adjusting. I think there's sort of a 3-fold strategy that firms could adopt. First of all, embrace AI for external competitiveness. Yeah, don't try to buck the trend, be part of it, embrace it. Second, develop a footprint around it. Develop ancillary goods and services, expand your offer, diversify. And third, maintain an outward orientation, especially in today's geopolitical context. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater in terms of looking inwards, but continue to look outwards and connect your new AI offer to fast-growing end-user markets so that you create jobs. The technological effect of AI could be, in the near term, negative on employment. It doesn't have to be, but it could be. But as you develop more goods and services around it, that is job creating. And as you connect to fast-growing end-user demand, that is another reason why you could create many, many more jobs.
Did Secretary Sulutin, did you want to weigh in, sir?
Okay, and of course, it's very important for the government to support. In digitalization and AI, it's really a policy of the government to know what is needed by the private sector. So from my perspective at the Department of Science and Technology, let me say this, that the common word is mid-career shifts. It's like midlife crisis for workers, right? So we need to look at the shift that we need to do, not only to use AI, but more importantly, on the digital transformation of all our data sets. From the government perspective, my role is to generate the data and transform the data into something that can be interoperable to be used by government and the private sector. So on the part of the Department of Science and Technology, aside from increasing the compute power of several of our facilities for the industry, and of course we will work with the private sector, we're building up what we call the Geospatial Analytics and Technology Solutions Hub, where we will convert all our data to GIS form, and we need to be innovative. We have done this before. The real problem with transforming data would be the software, like the Geographic Information System. But what we did was to develop the front-end applications that you can use your cell phone to provide data to the GIS backbone. So we've been developing that all over the country. And so we think that with this joint partnership between the industry and the government, we can overcome some of the challenges. In fact, I am assigned to really develop the AI framework for the country together with the private sector. So we're not starting from scratch, but definitely we need to focus on per sectoral needs because solutions differ from one sector to another.
As you mentioned, appropriate solutions. Sarah, you?
Just a few points, I think. First is that I've been involved in our local governments, the state government's Skills Council, and very much like the Philippines, they are also adopting a model of skills-led with the industry, being a very active part of it, so it does appear to be the way to go. What this framework also additionally emphasizes is the relevance of models like apprenticeship, as well as industry partnering with existing institutions. So India has this system called polytechnic colleges, which provides skilling in manufacturing industries, but how do they make the transition to digital and services? And so that's a big part of the question. But a few other considerations that have come up over the course of the debates of the council are a few. One is de-risking, which is that the demand for certain kinds of skills, particularly in technology, is dynamic. And so how do frameworks and how do educational systems de-risk from this change? So what is foundational and what is a skill? The second is certification, because in the absence of certification, the skilling sometimes does not have validity. So what kind of system, what kind of dynamic system can, and also how do you do fidelity, authenticity, et cetera, of certificates? The word skill passport is thrown around a lot, but it's a big one to answer. The last, I think, is financing. And we keep coming back to that, both from the lens of how do you finance for skilling, and then once you have skills to participate in the job market. Our own research, for example, on some types of work like data annotation and labeling show that you need access to devices, access to internet, very many measures of security. But in the absence of those kinds of measures, even they can end up being unequal. So paying attention to financing, skilling, and then work systems. So
thanks so much, Sarah. And Walter, please.
Thank you. And I'll be brief, and I think a colleague from Uruguay was also framing in a way how, for example, the labor markets can be impacted, but mainly in middle-income countries, how can we address this in terms of international cooperation? I think it is also important to acknowledge that when it comes to digital transformation needs, there has to be this approach that it can be comprehensive in which all the stages of digital development needs to be addressed. So of course, we're talking about harnessing AI and what this entails, but there are other needs in terms of what the infrastructure needed, digital public infrastructure to harness this, the skills and digital literacy needed also. So I think it's a whole cycle of addressing and preparing the capacities of human capital has been addressed before, but it has to do with the whole stages in which mostly developing countries, they don't engage in all of on those areas. It can be at the end just as recipients of digital technologies. In that regard, when it comes to AI, fully engaging in the stages of digital development, it's another way of us also addressing, maybe avoiding higher impacts when it comes to labor markets, in particular when it comes to informal sectors, as many of middle-income countries and developing countries.
Love that point on a comprehensive engagement of AI. And we have another question from the floor, please. And for all others, please do fill in your burning questions. We appreciate you being very much here and engaged with us. Yes, please.
Thank you so much. This is really such a complex, isn't it, issue. And of course, from the point of view of MICs, as you've already explained, there are many possibilities and opportunities, but also big challenges that we need to face. And in my country, in Peru, one of our aspirations, of course, is that the use of technology could be developed and applied according to ethical terms as well, and respect of human rights, isn't it? And I think that's really a very challenging task that we have ahead. And I wanted to ask, the panel if you have suggestions or thoughts, especially because we do not control, the production or the advancement of most of, advanced technologies in our countries. So how could we work together to foster, ethical application and use of AI or other, high developed technologies in our era? Thank you.
Apologies. Excellent point from Peru there. We're entering the space of AI governance and ethical AI. Sario, I'd like you to take this on, please.
Happy to jump in, and I hope the other panelists cover as well. But some of our work does talk to exactly those questions, which is the ways in which AI has effects on human rights. And we've done work both from a sectoral lens. In fact, both of these papers are with the UNDP B+HR program. But we look at both the ways in which AI impacts specific sectors, financial services, healthcare, labor, as well as retail, as well as the impacts of generative AI on gender. So some of this comes from the work. I don't know if there is any answer. The paper extensively delves into very specific mechanisms broadly aligned within the respect, protect, remedy framework of the UN general principles, which is the role of different entities in the ecosystem to respect, which is respect the standards that are laid down, protect, which is the state's responsibility to protect, and remedy, which is a shared responsibility between the state and other sectors. I know that was a long answer, but one of the most specific findings from all of this work is that particularly countries which are recipients of technology, there isn't empirical evidence on localized taxonomies of risk and harm, which is there is not as much understanding, for example, of how the effects of AI on language or minority languages, for example, or the effects of AI on specific kinds of labor which are central to the economy. So I don't know if this is a solution, but a central pillar of the effort to have more ethical human rights respecting AI, to my mind, is for localized, disaggregated understanding of risks. And these vary, and some of them relate to the way in which labor and the workforce will change. Some of these relate to more fundamental aspects of social and cultural identity. AI is a dominating and a force that pushes towards the mean, which means that languages that are not as datafied, for example, may not be as represented in AI, but they're inherent to social and cultural identity. So again, just to reiterate, this disaggregated information, understanding, insight, and negotiation around that is critical to human rights respecting AI. But I'll pause here and hopefully the others intervene as well.
Thanks, Sarah. As a matter of fact, it doesn't seem to be, in my perspective, it seems to be that we're dealing with an organism that hasn't even fully evolved yet. We don't even know the boundaries of AI. We don't even define what AI is. And so I think it's fundamental for us to answer the question, who is accountable for AI governance, right? Is it going to be a country level accountability? Is it going to be, you know, an international level accountability? So I think it's important for us to ask that question. Walter?
Yeah, thank you. I just felt motivated because of the question. It has to do with many of the discussions that are taking place currently at the UN. So I understand that, of course, when it comes to AI, there is a whole discussion about how developing countries can also contribute, but also being engaged when it comes to norm setting, but when it comes also to the ethical use of AI, and that it comes all the discussion of governance. So currently, there is an ongoing discussion to establish an independent scientific panel on AI, which basically help us to understand and assess, as it has been said before, which are the opportunities and risks of AI on sustainable development, but also that a panel that can contribute doing research and learning and experiences for countries to really harness the potential of AI. So even though that, for example, developing countries, which are mainly recipients, are not the ones establishing the norms, such initiatives are the ones looking for that to happen, in which all member states, all countries can be fully engaged. This can be a product produced by scientifics, by experts on the matter, which can contribute also for policy guidance for countries. And in that regard, I think enabling regulations at the national level are really important, in which a safe environment can be provided in the digital aspect, but also at the same time, you're fostering entrepreneurship, also promoting investments. So I think sometimes when we talk about regulation, it has not to be in the way of saying that this will not enhance or promote an environment that attracts investments or entrepreneurship. So I think there are some opportunities in which developing countries can be part of the conversation. Of course, there are divergent views in terms of what the role of the UN should be when it comes to AI. If the UN is the best for these discussions to take place, it should be more in a technical or expert level. So those are different discussions. But when it comes to the political aspect of it, if the UN provides this recommendation of governments vis-a-vis stakeholders having a more active role. So there are discussions, and at the same time, for example, having on the other way a dialogue that can promote governance on AI is another of the initiatives that are ongoing and under discussion at the UN.
Thank you so much, Walter. And with my eye on the time, I can take 1 to 2 more questions before we wrap up.
The guy there has been raising his hand.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much from Armenia.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. This was one of the most interesting panels. I would like to refer to the Global Digital Compact, to which my colleague from Salvador referred to. It says that, it stresses that there should be an open, inclusive, safe, secure digital space. And it also stresses that the digital technologies should be affordable and accessible for all. Mr. Ibrahim, for instance, referred to the ChatGPT, which really democratized artificial intelligence. But from the point of view of MICs, what should we do to avoid competition, technological competition in the digital space? What should we do to have at least this space a safe area to harness the benefits of the technologies, AI by all countries, developing countries, MICs and others? And one more point, coming back to the inequalities within societies, I would like to recall also the problem of gender digital divide. I think it is still there. And what solutions can we have to make sure that artificial intelligence, new technologies are accessible also for not only men, but also women? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Walter, did you want to? And then Mon?
Yeah, I will be brief, and I think when it comes to the GDC, it tries to address the different components of digital corporations. At the end, it's supposed to be a roadmap to guide efforts for digital cooperation, So tackling from infrastructure, digital capacity and skills, from data governance, from AI, but also the importance of having a safe environment online, information integrity. So it basically becomes a blueprint in which countries and stakeholders can contribute and can have this umbrella for the efforts to be implemented. So it becomes this guide for having the support from the UN system, and at least as we see it in El Salvador and have the view that we have, these contributes for our own national strategies that are implemented, in a way also to mobilize other actors to support the efforts at the national level.
Thank you so much. A brief response, Mon, please.
Okay. AI governance is top of mind of my professional organization. It is for that reason that, we always tell ourselves we need to be part of every conversation that talks about AI governance, ethical and responsible use and development of AI. Whether it's going to be a global initiative or a national initiative, we have to be there. And we also told ourselves we need to start with us, the professionals. So recently, just last February, we actually launched the Code for Ethical and Responsible Use and Development of AI for Data and AI Professionals. So maybe that's something that, but we're also beginning to realize that we don't have to start from scratch. We can actually learn from, all the initiatives that have been started all over the world. Thank you.
Yes, Secretary Solidum, and then I'll come to Philip.
Sometimes we're too focused on the technology or AI, for example. But the easiest way to really work together is to address common societal problems in our own countries and find out which technologies are best suited to respond to those, rather than focus simply on the technology. There's a saying that we should fall in love with the problem and not the solution, so that when we address the problem, we find out the root causes of the problem, then we will find the most appropriate solution. And that goes with entrepreneurship. I think really defining what the problems are, the common problems that we have in MICs, then we can really find out the most appropriate technological solutions for that problem.
Thanks so much, Secretary Solidum. Philip.
Yeah, we talk a lot about AI governance, the governance of AI. But I think another question, which I find far more interesting, is how does AI affect governance more broadly? Yeah. So, and there's two aspects to this. One, how can AI enhance the effectiveness of government in delivering services? That's a big question. And there's a huge role for governments to be playing much closer to the ball, to adopt new models. The fact that we're so way behind on the SDG agenda suggests we need new directions. Governments need to be more adaptable, which means learning, unlearning. They need to be more agile. AI can help with that. But then secondly, how does AI affect the space, one could say the democratic space, but the space for future-oriented pro-development reform? Yeah? Are we going to see a further sort of amplification of echo chambers where misinformation and disinformation thrives? Are we going to see greater polarization and inequality in the future? Or will AI actually help in creating a stronger demand side for good governance?
Thank you so much, Philip. And with my eye on the time, I would like to thank our panel speakers by giving you the floor for your closing remarks. But just before that, I did not expect a very engaged audience, so I have you to thank. Please do give yourselves a big round of applause. First, before we conclude the session, thank you so very much. I'll start by inviting Secretary Solidum, please, to offer your concluding remarks.
As a policymaker, I believe that the perspective that we must have is to look at really ensuring a participative and supportive environment that will support all sectors in the society. If we have a whole society approach, we could fully harness the benefits of digitalization and AI tools for inclusive growth. So how do we do this? We need science-based assessments, and these are essential for us to know where we stand, and their results can also serve as guidance in shaping how we move forward with the rapid technological changes happening around us. There is no one-size-fits-all approach for this. Different stakeholders in the society should be involved in consultations, not just to garner their support, but also to determine how these frontier technologies could help them in synergy with government initiatives. Policy should cater to the benefit of the civil society, industry, academia, and the society as a whole. As MICs, we have to prepare our people, students, workforce, communities, and ourselves. We need to capacitate them, including ourselves, support their education, and provide upskilling and reskilling initiatives appropriate for digital and AI technologies. Lastly, we need to invest in infrastructure and research and development. Data, internet connectivity, and fundamental systems and facilities are also prerequisites in moving forward and advancing in the world of accelerated digitalization and AI. Most important, though, is we should implement AI for good.
Thank you, Secretary Salidun. Walter.
Thank you, and just as a summary of the conversation, I think the collective task is to ensure that digital transformation becomes a driver of inclusion, resilience, and sustainable growth, not a new source of exclusion and disparity. We have acknowledged the transboundary nature and function and application of some new and emerging technologies. So in that way, there is an urgent need for a coordinated, inclusive, cohesive, and adaptable approach. And when it comes, for example, in terms of AI governance at different levels, as well, strengthening relevant foundations is necessary if middle-income countries are to actively participate in the global digital economy, not merely adapted to it. They have to be active contributors to it. And when it comes to the global cooperation or the role that the UN can have in a fragmented digital landscape with diverse regional and private-led platforms, we have already been talking about concentration in specific countries or private actors. The UN plays a unique role, and it can be in terms of facilitating an inclusive dialogue, but also setting universal normative baselines, and also bridging efforts across governments, industry, and civil society. And I would like just also to touch upon the Secretary words of having a whole of society approach. When we talk about digital transformation, we cannot avoid acknowledging the importance of having everybody on the table, not only governments. That's, of course, the leading voice when it comes to national strategies, but the contribution of relevant actors is, at the end, the real difference when it comes to the actions. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Very well said. Thank you, Walter. Mr. Mon Ibrahim, please.
We're actually facing a huge elephant, in front of us, and that's actually the widening AI gap. We still have the digital divide over there, but there's a bigger elephant that's actually emerging in front of us. That's the AI divide. The opportunities and risks brought about by frontier technologies is not unique to the Philippines. We should be able to learn from each other, and I encourage everyone to learn from us. I also would like to learn. We would also like to learn from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, you please.
I'd just like to go back to the one of the initial provocations, which is that AI presents a significant opportunity, whether it is to build community, exploit new opportunities, even do governance better, but it also presents some risks of its own. And in every effort, in every conversation around AI, this understanding, engaging, and debating this tension is critical. And I'll pause here.
Thank you.
Maybe when we think of AI, don't just think of economic growth, think of development. There's a lot of benefits that pop up in welfare surplus, consumer surplus, producer surplus, that does not immediately materialize, just like the ICT revolution didn't immediately show up in total factor productivity growth. Second, we're going to see a vastly more competitive external landscape because of AI. A sitting duck will be a dead duck, so countries need to double up and act, take part in it, compete. And finally, be mindful of the inequality, not just within countries, but also between countries, because there will be several countries that will not be able to compete and will be left behind. Addressing this issue will require not just desirable strategies, but a move towards better governance.
All right. With that, please join me in thanking our esteemed panel speakers for bringing those key messages. Thank you so very much. And I think we would be invited to have a photo opportunity, is that correct? Thank you so much once again. Thank you, Philip. Thank you. Wonderful exchange.
Thank you very much to our moderator and speakers for sharing their insight on this topic. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as we draw our gathering to a close, we welcome you to the closing ceremony, a moment to reflect on the rich discussions, the collective insights, and the renewed commitments shared throughout the event. Distinguished guests, please turn your attention to the screen for the video recap of the high-level conference.
Welcome to the high-level conference of middle-income countries, hosted by the government of the Philippines.
Kingdom of Morocco remains fully committed to this noble cause, and you can continue to count on our steadfast and unwavering support as we move forward together.
This conference sends a clear message. Global challenges require global partnerships, and we will meet these challenges together.
In the spirit of shared aspiration, I warmly welcome you to fully engage in our discussions. As a founding member of the United Nations, celebrating its 80th anniversary this year, the Philippines reaffirms its unwavering commitment to revitalizing partnerships as an essential pillar of 21st century multilateralism. I wish everyone a fruitful and meaningful conference. And to our friends and partners who have traveled from afar, we hope you enjoy both a productive and memorable stay here in the Philippines. Thank you, and mabuhay. New achievement, further strengthening our collective voice and advancing the role of middle-income countries within global governance processes. The spirit of McCarthy will inspire us and galvanize our efforts under your leadership to meet the expectation entrusted to us by our respective people. Let's be guided by this spirit as we continue to uphold the values of solidarity, cooperation, and innovation that define our group. I thank you for your.
Excellencies and distinguished delegates, the 81st session of our commission, which concluded just last week. The resolution called for regional cooperation and dialogue to address the specific concerns and needs of middle-income countries.
We are confident that through continued dialogue and collective leadership, middle-income countries can usher a new era of global partnership, one rooted in sustainable progress, genuine inclusion, and long-term development. Thank you. Participants, ladies and gentlemen, from Rabat to Manila, we are no longer just articulating challenges. We are designing solutions, building platforms for action, and demanding coherence at all levels, global, regional, and national.
In continuing discussions, and we have to spend time with that. It takes time away from our jobs, what we have to do with. Number two is providing a clear transition period so that companies who want to adopt that can actually be able to adopt that over a reasonable period of time. And third is providing for different levels of adoption depending on the readiness of the ASEAN member states. And so then we can have a unified, taxonomy in ASEAN region.
Many countries are doing this at different stages: the Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, as well as China. But we hope that with the better information, the banking sector will be more willing to provide financing to SMEs and smaller players with the better information.
Ladies and gentlemen, at UNIDO, our mandate is inclusive and sustainable industrial development. And we are committed to forging solutions that address the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution.
So we understand it is so important to promote South-South that can help the global South in their economic development. What UNIDO can do.
South-South cooperation is not just a modality, it is a movement of solidarity and key to unlocking mixed potential and addressing the structural gaps. Through South-South cooperation, mixed can lead a new era of development cooperation, one that values what counts, finances what matters, and leaves no country behind. I thank you.
As we adopt the Makati Declaration, let us solidify our collective resolve to break new ground, also to close development gaps and ensure that no middle-income country is left behind. So I take it then that we can adopt the Makati Declaration, and therefore the Makati Declaration is hereby adopted.
We now invite our distinguished speakers on stage for their closing remarks. We will hear closing remarks from distinguished panelists who each have played essential roles in shaping and supporting the development journeys of middle-income countries. We first invite Mr. Hao Liangshi, United Nations Under-Secretary General and Associate Administrator of UN Development Program, a steadfast partner in advancing sustainable development across the Global South. The UNDP is an organizing partner of this high-level conference.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, as we come to the close of this important high-level conference on the middle-income countries, allow me to first express UNDP's gratitude to the government of the Philippines for the strong leadership, and to all participants for your rich, constructive, and forward-looking contributions. Over these 2 days, we have broken new ground, just as the theme of this conference called us to do. Throughout the panels, from financing, green transitions, digital innovation, to regional partnerships, we affirmed that middle-income countries are not simply countries in transition. They are engines of global development solutions. Remaining competitive requires a triple transition, from investment and capital accumulation to infusion of technologies and to domestic innovation. This will require alignment between goal setting, between integrated financing frameworks, and effective, accountable, and inclusive governance. This will require modernized institutions, targeted investments in skills and digital public infrastructure, and a fundamental shift towards economies that reward entrepreneurship, merit, and sustainability. Importantly, the Makati Declaration adopted today positions MICs to influence the negotiations at the upcoming 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, where we must adopt and advocate for a financing system that aligns with today's complex realities, not outdated income classifications. The Makati Declaration reaffirms our collective commitment to reform the international financial architecture to better reflect the needs of the MICs, expand access to concessional and innovative financing, advance beyond the GDP metrics to guide development cooperation, strengthen South-South and triangular cooperation as engines of transformation, and champion inclusive green and digital transitions, turning risks like climate change and AI into drivers of resilience. Moving forward, UNDP will continue to champion the priorities of middle-income countries. We will continue to support delivery of integrated country-specific development solutions based on a systems change approach. UNDP will strengthen its support for national capacities in strategic foresight, strategic innovation, and sustainable financing, and will promote inclusive digital economies and responsible AI strategies to ensure that no one is left behind. Let the Makati Declaration serve as not as the end of our work, but as a launchpad for renewed commitment to solidarity, great ambition, and more collective action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Undersecretary General Mr. Hao Yang-shi. Next, we will hear from Ms. Fatou Haidara, Deputy to the Director General and Managing Director of the Directorate of Global Partnerships and External Relations at the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, who brings valuable perspectives on global cooperation and industrial transformation. The UNIDO is also an organizing partner of this high-level conference.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, the adoption of the Makati Declaration marks a pivotal moment in our collective pursuit of sustainable development for more than 5 billion people, 75% of humanity. I wish to commend all participants and our host for their insightful contributions and strong commitment to advancing the sustainable development agenda of middle-income countries. The discussions held over the past days have provided us with both a sense of urgency and a renewed sense of possibility. The thematic panels have highlighted key pathways for unlocking the full potential of middle-income countries. The outcomes of our conference represent a historic step towards a clear roadmap for collective action. It provides a comprehensive framework that emphasizes the importance of inclusive development cooperation, building on solidarity, and the sharing of experiences among developing countries. We were reminded that South-South cooperation, South-South and triangular cooperation remains a powerful vehicle of progress. Measures for sustainable development beyond GDP are critical. Adopting multidimensional indicators that capture social, environmental, and economic progress will guide our future actions, focusing on innovative and equitable mechanisms that address MIC's liquidity challenges and debt sustainability, as well as access to concessional and non-concessional finance. Productive capacity building, focusing on economic diversification through sustainable supply chains, enhance industrial competitiveness and job creation. Human and social development, emphasizing skills and capacity building, including in digitalization, to empower women and youth, reduce inequalities, and provide access to new market opportunities, including green jobs. And green transitions, recognizing middle-income countries' critical role in global climate action. The dedicated styled event organized by UNIDO on this precise topic underscored that greener production systems not only mitigate environmental impact, but also create new opportunities for innovation and employment. This is especially true when supported by tailored climate finance and technology transfer. Ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude my remarks, let me reiterate the implementation of the future strategic plan of action will require global multi-stakeholder partnerships, leveraging the strength of the government, private sector, financial institutions, civil society, and international organizations to maximize development impact. UNIDO stands ready to transform the Makati Declaration into tangible progress. Our next step in that direction will be to organize a side event on the occasion of the upcoming high-level political forum in July in New York, under the leadership of the Philippines in their capacity as chair of the like-minded group of MICs. We invite you all to join us, and I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Fato Haidara. As our final speaker, we are honored to invite His Excellency Antonio M. Lagdameo, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the Philippines to the United Nations in New York and Chair of the Like-Minded Group for Middle-Income Countries, to close the session.
The Honorable Arsenio Balisacan, Secretary of Economy, Planning and Development, UN Undersecretary General and UNDP Associate Administrator, Haulang Su, UNIDO Deputy Director General Fatou Haidara, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We gathered here in Makati over the past 2 days, determined to change the narrative about middle-income countries. With your valuable support and active engagement, I believe we have resolutely accomplished this task. Through our confidence and the work of the like-minded group, MICs are banding together to assert our voices, relevance, and agency in our national capacities, our regions, and in the United Nations. In face of common challenges such as climate change and the digital divide, we have collectively reaffirmed through the Makati Declaration the need for the international community to recognize and respond to the special needs of MICs and develop more tailored responses and enhanced support mechanisms. This includes moving forward on developing metrics beyond GDP to allow greater access for MICs to development, financing, and cooperation. Importantly, we forged a consensus to take concrete steps to elaborate and promote a strategic program of action for MICs, whose time has come. As chair of the like-minded group of MICs in New York, rest assured that the Philippines will work closely with all of your delegations and rely on your continued trust and guidance. Together, let us further raise the voices and interests of MICs in relevant UN processes, such as the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, or FFD4, the High-Level Political Forum, and the implementation of the Pact for the Future and the Global Digital Compact. During the conference, we identified priorities for MICs, as well as initiatives and good practices we can learn from and share in a spirit of South-South cooperation. The wide spectrum of participation at the conference, from governments, the UN and international organizations, to the private sector and the academe, reflects the depth, breadth, and strength of our partnerships for MICs. In this sense, the conference truly did live up to its theme of, and I quote, breaking new grounds for MICs. It was also very heartening to welcome a number of neighboring MICs in the Asia-Pacific region as guests. Allow me to wholeheartedly thank the Department of Foreign Affairs, UNSCAP, UNDP, UNIDO, and the Resident Coordinator's Office for all the hard work in organizing this conference. Thank you also to my dear colleagues from New York, PR Hilale of Morocco, PR Getz of Namibia, PR Wallace of Jamaica, and PR Wellington of the Dominican Republic, as well as all the experts of LMG Mix, for your active participation and presence with us. I likewise thank all of our distinguished panelists and delegates. Deep appreciation goes to our steadfast partners from other Philippine government agencies, especially the Department of Economy, Planning, and Development. As we conclude our proceedings, let us carry with us this spirit of solidarity, friendship, and cooperation embodied in the Makati Declaration, and continue to promote the sustainable development journeys and aspirations of middle-income countries. With this, it is my honor to declare a close of our high-level conference for middle-income countries.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Antonio M. Lagdameo. This officially concludes the high-level conference of middle-income countries. Thank you for your participation, and we wish you all safe travels. Thank you and good day.